The small ship drifted through Earth's outer solar system like a lost bird. Its hull gleamed with strange metals that caught sunlight in ways human eyes had never seen before. Inside, Ambassador Veltar pressed 6 thin fingers against the viewing port and stared at the blue planet ahead. "This is it," Veltar whispered to the ship's AI. "Our last hope." The Zephyrian had traveled across half the galaxy to reach this backwater system. Their people were dying. The Krillian horde had already destroyed 12 colonies and was moving toward the heart of Zephyrian space. Every military fleet sent to stop them had been crushed. Every defensive line had been broken. Veltar's species had always been peaceful. They solved problems through talking and sharing knowledge. War was something they read about in historical records, not something they lived through. But the Krillians didn't want to talk. They only wanted to take and destroy. 3 months ago, the Zephyrian Science Council had picked up strange radio signals from this small yellow star. The signals showed music, art, and scientific discussions. The beings on the third planet seemed advanced but peaceful, just like the Zephyrians themselves. Surely they would understand the need to stand together against the Krillians. The ship's communication system crackled to life. A voice spoke in perfect galactic standard, though with a strange accent. "Unknown vessel, this is Luna Base Control. State your purpose and prepare for escort to Earth Orbital Station." Veltar blinked all 4 eyes in surprise. These humans had learned galactic standard already. That showed impressive intelligence and dedication to peaceful contact. "Greetings, Luna Base Control. I am Ambassador Veltar of the Zephyrian Collective. I come seeking urgent diplomatic talks with your leaders." "Understood, Ambassador. Please follow the escort ships to Station Alpha 7. 2 sleek human vessels appeared on either side of Veltar's ship. The ambassador noticed they looked quite different from Zephyrian exploration ships. These were more angular, with what looked like weapon ports along their hulls. Perhaps they were mining ships or vessels designed for asteroid work. The journey to the space station took 6 hours. During that time, Veltar practiced the speech over and over. The Zephyrian Collective represented 40 billion beings across 6 different species. They had always solved problems through cooperation and shared wisdom. Surely these humans would join them in creating a defensive alliance. Station Alpha 7 was massive, much larger than any Zephyrian outpost. As Veltar's ship docked, the ambassador noticed more of those angular ships moving in formation around the station. The humans certainly kept busy with their industrial work. Inside the station, Veltar met the first human face-to-face. Commander Lisa Park was shorter than expected, with pale skin and dark hair pulled back in a tight knot. She wore a uniform that looked military in style, but Veltar assumed it was probably for some kind of exploration corps. "Welcome to Earth Space, Ambassador," Commander Park said. "Admiral Chen is waiting to meet you." They walked through corridors that hummed with energy. Veltar noticed many humans wearing similar uniforms, all moving with quick, purposeful steps. Everyone looked very serious and focused. These beings certainly took their work seriously. Admiral Sarah Chen was older than Commander Park, with silver hair and sharp green eyes. She sat behind a metal desk in a room filled with screens showing star maps and what looked like ship positions. Veltar assumed they were tracking trade routes or scientific expeditions. "Please sit," Admiral Chen said, gesturing to a chair. "Commander Park tells me you've traveled a long way with urgent business." Veltar took a deep breath and began the speech that would save both their peoples. "Admiral Chen, I come to you in our darkest hour. The Zephyrian Collective faces destruction from a force called the Krillian Horde. They are not like us. They do not seek knowledge or peaceful trade. They take worlds by force and kill those who resist." The Admiral listened without speaking, her green eyes never leaving Veltar's face. "We have tried to stop them," Veltar continued. "We sent our best scientists to create new defensive technologies. We built shields around our colonies and tried to negotiate. Nothing has worked. They have already taken 12 of our worlds and killed millions of our people." Admiral Chen leaned forward slightly. "How large is their fleet?" "Our scouts report over 3,000 ships of various sizes. Their technology is crude but effective. They use kinetic weapons and plasma charges. Very destructive, very violent." Veltar shuddered at the memory of the battle reports. The Krillians fought without honor or mercy. They targeted civilian centers and destroyed everything in their path. "We intercepted your radio signals 3 months ago," Veltar said. "Your people seem advanced and peaceful like us. You understand the value of knowledge and cooperation. We hoped you might join us in a mutual defense agreement. Admiral Chen was quiet for a long moment. She touched a button on her desk and spoke quietly to someone Veltar couldn't see. Director Walsh? I need you in conference room 7. We have a situation. A few minutes later, another human joined them. Director Walsh was tall and thin, with gray hair and tired eyes. He sat down across from Veltar and listened as the Admiral repeated the key points. 3,000 ships, Director Walsh said slowly. How many worlds do they control now? 47 systems, Veltar replied. They grow stronger with each victory. Soon they will reach our core worlds. Once they take our shipyards and research centers, the entire collective will fall. Admiral Chen and Director Walsh looked at each other. Veltar could see them having some kind of silent conversation, the way people do when they know each other well. Ambassador, Admiral Chen said finally, what exactly are you asking of us? A defensive alliance, Veltar said eagerly. Pool our resources and knowledge. Your ships could help evacuate civilians while we work together on new defensive technologies. With cooperation, we can create barriers the Krillians cannot break. Admiral Chen nodded slowly. I see, and how long do we have? Our analysts believe the Krillians will reach the outer colonies in 6 months. The core worlds will fall within a year after that. The two humans looked at each other again. This time, Veltar saw something that might have been surprise in their expressions. Admiral, Director Walsh said carefully, I think there may be some miscommunication here about what kind of help we can provide. Admiral Chen stood up and walked to one of the star map displays. She touched the screen and it showed the local sector, including both Earth and Zephyrian space. Ambassador Veltar, she said quietly, I want to make sure I understand. You're asking us to help defend your people against an aggressive military force. Yes, exactly. Veltar stood up excitedly. Together, our scientists can find a peaceful solution. Admiral Chen turned back to face the ambassador. For the first time since the meeting began, she smiled. It was not the kind of smile Veltar had expected. Ambassador, Admiral Chen said, I think you may have misunderstood what humans do best. We're going to help you with the Krillian problem. But I don't think it will be the kind of help you're expecting. 3 weeks after the meeting with Admiral Chen, Veltar floated in the observation deck of the Zephyrian science vessel, Bright Harmony. The ship hung in space near the edge of their territory, waiting for the human assistance to arrive. Around them, other Zephyrian ships prepared for what they hoped would be their last stand. Veltar felt good about the alliance. The humans had seemed very interested in helping. Admiral Chen had asked many detailed questions about Krillian ship designs, weapon types, and battle tactics. Director Walsh had requested star charts showing every Krillian-held system. Such thorough preparation showed how seriously Earth took the alliance. Ambassador, called Captain Velnara from the bridge. Long-range sensors are detecting ships approaching from the Sol system. Veltar glided to the sensor station, forearms moving excitedly. Wonderful. How many science vessels are they bringing? Captain Velnara's orange skin darkened with confusion. Sir, I'm not sure these are science vessels. The main screen lit up with sensor readings. At first, Veltar couldn't understand what they were seeing. The human ships were enormous, much larger than any vessel the Zephyrians had ever built. And there were so many of them. Computer, count the incoming vessels, Velnara ordered, detecting 217 ships of various configurations. Mass readings indicate significant armor plating and weapon systems. Veltar's heart stopped beating for a moment. Weapon systems. There had to be some mistake. Perhaps they are mining ships, Veltar said hopefully. Humans might use heavy equipment for asteroid work. The ships came closer and the sensors revealed more details. These were not mining vessels. The lead ships looked like floating cities covered in gun turrets. Smaller ships darted between them like hunting birds. At the center of the formation was something so large it barely fit on the sensor screen. Incoming transmission, the communications officer announced. The main screen switched to show Admiral Chen's face. Behind her, Veltar could see what looked like a command center filled with humans wearing military uniforms and working at tactical displays. Ambassador Veltar, Admiral Chen said. This is Admiral Chen aboard the TDF Retribution. The Terran Defense Fleet is ready to begin operations against the Krillian forces. Admiral, Veltar said carefully. Could you explain what kind of operations you're planning? Admiral Chen smiled the same cold smile from their first meeting. We're going to solve your Krillian problem, Ambassador. Captain Webb will coordinate with your forces for evacuation procedures. The screen split to show another human. Captain Marcus Webb looked younger than Admiral Chen, but his eyes held something that made Veltar's skin crawl. This human looked like he enjoyed his work too much. Ambassador, Captain Webb said, we'll need complete tactical data on all Krillian positions, ship types, and defensive installations. Also locations of any civilian populations in the target zones. Target zones? Veltar whispered. The 47 systems currently under Krillian control, Captain Webb replied as if it was obvious. We'll be clearing them out sector by sector. Veltar felt sick. Captain, Admiral, I think there's been a misunderstanding. We wanted help with defense, not whatever this is. Admiral Chen's expression didn't change. Ambassador, you came to us because your defensive strategies weren't working. We're providing a different approach. On the sensor screen, the human fleet continued to grow. More ships arrived every few minutes, each one larger and more heavily armed than the last. Veltar counted missile pods, gun batteries, and weapon types they had no names for. Sir, Captain Velnara whispered, I'm detecting energy signatures that match theoretical weapons designs our scientists abandoned centuries ago. They were considered too dangerous to build. Veltar closed all four eyes and tried to think. When they had studied human radio signals, they had focused on the music and art. They had listened to scientific discussions and philosophical debates. Somehow they had missed the other signals. The news reports about wars, the entertainment shows about conflict, the historical documentaries about human military campaigns. Admiral Chen, Veltar said slowly, when we asked for help, we were hoping you could assist with evacuation and defensive technologies. We wanted to save as many lives as possible while finding a peaceful solution. Captain Webb laughed, a sound that made every Zephyrian on the bridge step backward. Ambassador, Admiral Chen said patiently, you told us the Krillians had killed millions of your people and were moving to kill millions more. You said they couldn't be negotiated with and had rejected all peaceful solutions. We're going to make sure they can't hurt anyone else. But how many will die in the process? Veltar asked. Admiral Chen and Captain Webb looked at each other. Something passed between them that Veltar couldn't understand. That depends on how quickly they surrender, Admiral Chen said finally. The human fleet moved into attack formation. Veltar watched ships that could destroy planets position themselves like chess pieces on a board. Each vessel moved with precise purpose, taking positions that created interlocking fields of fire across multiple star systems. Computer, Veltar called out, analyze human fleet composition and estimate firepower. The computer hummed for several seconds before responding. Warning, analysis complete. Estimated combined firepower exceeds total energy output of all Krillian forces by factor of 12. Recommend immediate withdrawal to minimum safe distance, 12 times more powerful. The humans had brought enough firepower to destroy the entire Krillian Empire and still have weapons left over. Ambassador, Captain Webb's voice came through the speakers. You might want to move your ships back a few light years. We're about to begin preliminary bombardment of forward Krillian positions. Veltar stared at the tactical display. Red dots marked every Krillian ship and base. Green dots showed human vessels moving to surround them. It looked less like a military operation and more like an extermination. Admiral Chen, Veltar said desperately, please reconsider. There must be civilians on those Krillian ships, non-combatants who were forced to join their fleets. We've considered that, Admiral Chen replied. We're broadcasting surrender terms on all frequencies. Any Krillian ship that powers down weapons and submits to boarding will be spared. Any ship that resists will be destroyed. The transmission ended. Veltar stood in the middle of the bridge, surrounded by his terrified crew, watching as the human fleet prepared to do exactly what the Zephyrians had asked for. They were going to stop the Krillian threat. They were going to stop it by removing the Krillians entirely. Sir, Communications Officer Velkus said in a shaking voice, I'm monitoring human fleet communications. They're discussing something called acceptable casualty rates and collateral damage parameters. Veltar realized with growing horror that humans thought about war the way Zephyrians thought about mathematics. Everything had numbers, calculations, and optimal solutions. The difference was that human mathematics involved death counts instead of research data. Captain, Veltar said quietly, take us back to Zephyrian space, immediately. Sir, what about the Alliance? Veltar watched the human warships spread across the star map like a plague. They moved with terrible efficiency, each ship knowing exactly what it was supposed to destroy. "I'm beginning to think," Veltar said, "that we may have made a terrible mistake. We asked for help fighting monsters. Instead, we may have just invited bigger monsters to our home." As the bright harmony turned away from the human fleet, Veltar's last view was of missile pods opening like deadly flowers across 100 warships. Whatever happened next, the galaxy would never be the same. War Commander Krextal stood on the bridge of the Krillian battleship Blooddrinker and watched the stars through the main viewer. His red eyes gleamed with satisfaction as he reviewed the latest conquest reports. 3 more Zephyrian colonies had fallen in the past week. The soft-skinned aliens barely fought back before surrendering. "Commander," his tactical officer hissed through sharp teeth. "Long-range sensors detect unknown ships at the edge of this system." Krextal turned his massive frame toward the sensor station. His species had evolved from pack hunters, and every movement showed controlled violence. "How many?" "Difficult to determine, sir. They appear to be using some kind of sensor masking. Estimated 20 to 30 vessels." Krextal laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Another pathetic Zephyrian rescue attempt. Ready all weapons. We'll crush them quickly and continue to the next system." But as the unknown ships came closer, Krextal began to feel something he hadn't experienced in years. Doubt. These vessels didn't move like Zephyrian ships. Those peaceful fools always approached in neat formations, broadcasting surrender requests and humanitarian concerns. These ships spread out like hunting pack, taking positions that made no sense for a rescue mission. "Sir," the tactical officer said with growing concern, "I'm detecting massive energy signatures from the lead vessels. Weapon types unknown." "Unknown?" Krextal snarled. "We've fought every species in this sector. There are no unknown weapons." The communication system crackled to life. A voice spoke in perfect galactic standard, but with an accent Krextal had never heard before. "Krillian vessels. This is Captain Marcus Webb of the Terran Defense Force. You are ordered to power down all weapons and prepare to surrender immediately." Krextal stared at the speaker in disbelief. Terran, he had never heard of any species called Terrans. And what kind of prey species gave orders to Krillian warfleets? "Terran vessel," Krextal replied. "I am War Commander Krextal of the Krillian Horde. We do not surrender to anyone. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed." There was a pause. Then Captain Webb's voice returned, and Krextal could hear something like amusement in it. "War Commander, this is your final warning. Surrender now or face the consequences." Krextal's temper exploded. "Consequences? I command 200 warships. We have conquered 47 star systems. What could your tiny fleet possibly do to us?" "You're about to find out," Captain Webb replied calmly. The first human missile salvo arrived 30 seconds later. Krextal watched in shock as his forward ships simply vanished. Not destroyed in the usual sense, with explosions and debris fields. They were there one moment and gone the next, erased by weapons that hit faster and harder than anything in Krillian experience. "Report," Krextal roared. "Sir, we've lost 18 ships in the first wave. The enemy missiles. They're not like anything in our database. They seem to adapt to our shields and armor in real time." Another salvo arrived. This time, Krextal could see the missiles on the sensor screen. Tiny dots moving at impossible speeds and changing course to hit weak points that should have been impossible to detect from such distances. 25 more Krillian ships died. "Return fire. All weapons," Krextal commanded. The Krillian fleet unleashed everything it had. Plasma charges, kinetic rounds, and energy beams filled the space between the two fleets. It was enough firepower to crack a planet. None of it reached the human ships. Something was intercepting every shot. Point defense systems beyond Krillian understanding swatted aside their most powerful weapons like annoying insects. The few shots that got through hit barriers that absorbed the energy and seemed to make the human ships glow brighter. "Impossible," Krextal whispered. "Captain." Webb's voice came through the speakers again, still calm and controlled. "War Commander, you've now seen what happens to ships that refuse to surrender. I'm giving you one final chance. Power down your weapons and prepare for boarding, or join your forward vessels in whatever afterlife your species believes in." Krextal looked at his tactical display. In less than 5 minutes, he had lost over 40 ships. The human fleet hadn't even moved from their initial positions. They were killing his forces from a distance that should have been impossible. "Sir," his tactical officer whispered, "I'm detecting more human ships entering the system. Many more." The sensor screen updated to show the full human fleet. Krextal's courage finally broke. There weren't 30 human ships. There were over 200, each one larger and more heavily armed than his flagship. They had been hiding behind some kind of advanced stealth technology, revealing themselves only now to show the full scope of Krillian defeat. "This isn't possible," Krextal said, his voice cracking. "No species builds fleets like this. No one fights like this. Humans do," came Captain Webb's reply. Somehow the human had been monitoring their communications. "War Commander, you have 60 seconds to decide. Surrender or die." Krextal had built his reputation on never backing down from a fight, but he had also lived long enough to recognize when a fight was lost. His species might be aggressive, but they weren't stupid. "All ships," he announced on the fleet frequency, "power down weapons. Prepare for surrender." The word tasted like poison in his mouth. In 300 years of conquest, no Krillian fleet had ever surrendered to anyone. "Wise choice," Captain Webb said. "Transport ships are approaching your vessels. Your crews will be processed and relocated according to human military protocols." The next several hours passed like a nightmare for Krextal. Human soldiers boarded every Krillian ship, moving through the corridors like they owned them. These beings looked small and weak compared to Krillians, but they carried weapons that could stop a Krillian warrior in his tracks without killing him. Captain Webb himself came aboard the Blood Drinker. He was younger than Krextal had expected, with pale skin and dark hair, but his eyes held something that made the war commander step backward. This human looked at him the way a Krillian looked at prey. "War Commander Krextal," Captain Webb said, consulting a data pad, "you're responsible for the destruction of 12 civilian colonies and approximately 4 million deaths. Under Terran military law, that makes you a war criminal." "War criminal?" Krextal snarled. "We are conquerors. We take what we need and destroy what resists. This is the way of the strong." Captain Webb nodded as if this was exactly what he had expected to hear. "Yes, we read your cultural files. Your species believes that might makes right and that the strong should dominate the weak." "Exactly." Krextal felt a moment of hope. Perhaps these humans understood strength after all. "The problem," Captain Webb continued, "is that humans are stronger than you. Much stronger. So by your own cultural rules, we get to decide what happens to your people now." The hope died in Krextal's chest. The human was right, and they both knew it. The Krillians had built their entire civilization on the idea that power gave them the right to rule others. Now they faced beings with far greater power. What will you do with us?" Krextal asked quietly. Captain Webb smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "We're going to teach you how to be civilized. Every Krillian ship and colony will be occupied by human forces until you learn to coexist peacefully with other species. Those who refuse to learn will be relocated to prison worlds. And if we resist?" Captain Webb's smile grew colder. "War Commander, you just tried to resist. How did that work out for you?" Krextal looked around his bridge, now filled with human soldiers who had captured his entire fleet without breaking a sweat. These beings fought like nothing he had ever encountered. They used weapons, tactics, and strategies that seemed impossible until you saw them in action. "Your species calls itself the Krillian Horde," Captain Webb said, heading toward the exit. "But you're not a horde anymore. You're now under human administration. I suggest you get used to the idea." As the human captain left, Krextal slumped in his command chair. In one day, the mighty Krillian Empire had been reduced to occupied territory. They had met beings who were everything they claimed to be, only more so. The Krillians had thought they were apex predators. They were wrong. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the command center of the TDF Retribution, watching holographic displays that showed the systematic destruction of the Krillian Empire. What had started as a rescue mission for the Zephyrians had become something much larger. The humans had discovered that the galaxy was full of species who solved problems the wrong way. "Admiral," reported Commander Park, "the siege of Krylos Prime is complete. Their government has agreed to unconditional surrender." Chen nodded without looking away from the tactical displays. In 6 months, human forces had captured every major Krillian stronghold, liberated 47 conquered systems, and established military administrations throughout the former Krillian territory. It was the most successful military campaign in human history, and most people back on Earth didn't even know it was happening. "What's the status on the other operations?" Chen asked. Commander Park consulted her datapad. "Operation Clean Sweep has identified 17 other aggressive species in this galactic sector. The Vorthan Empire has been bombing civilian targets in the Centauri cluster. The hegemony of Skarath is using slave labor to build warships. The Nethys Collective is conducting biological experiments on captured prisoners. Chen studied the star maps with cold calculation. Each red dot represented another problem that needed to be solved. Another threat that peaceful species couldn't handle on their own. Recommendations? Admiral Patterson suggests a three-pronged approach. Simultaneous strikes against the Vorthon fleet, the Skarath shipyards, and the Nethys research stations. Estimated time to completion, 4 months. 4 months to topple 3 interstellar empires. Chen remembered when humans thought it would take years to reach Mars. Now they were reshaping galactic politics on a schedule that would have seemed impossible just decades ago. Approved, Chen said. Alert the fleet commanders. Across the galaxy, human warships moved to new positions. The campaign against the Krillians had been like a test run, teaching humanity about galactic warfare and alien psychology. Now they were ready to apply those lessons on a larger scale. Captain Webb appeared on the main communication screen, speaking from his position near the Vorthon border. Admiral, we've completed psychological profiles on all the major aggressive species. The pattern is consistent across different biologies and cultures. Explain. They're all bullies, Webb said simply. They pick on weaker species because they've never faced anything stronger than themselves. None of them have contingency plans for fighting an enemy that outclasses them in every category. Chen wasn't surprised. Humanity had developed its military doctrine through thousands of years of fighting other humans. Every strategy had been tested against opponents who were just as intelligent, just as adaptable, and just as ruthless. These alien empires had grown strong by conquering pacifist species who barely fought back. Sir, interrupted Communications Officer Torres, we're receiving a priority transmission from the Zephyrian Collective. Chen accepted the call. Ambassador Veltar appeared on screen looking older and more worried than during their first meeting. Admiral Chen, Veltar said carefully, the Zephyrian Council has some concerns about the expanding scope of human military operations. I'm listening. When we asked for help, we hoped you would assist with the Krillian threat, but now human fleets are moving against species throughout the sector. Some of these groups pose no direct threat to Zephyrian space. Chen clasped her hands behind her back. She had been expecting this conversation for weeks. Ambassador, when we studied your sector's political situation, we discovered a pattern. The Krillians weren't unique. They were just the largest group of aggressors in a region filled with aggressive species. If we only stopped them, another empire would have taken their place within a few years. But surely that's not your responsibility, Veltar protested. Each species should be allowed to determine its own fate. Should the Vorthons be allowed to determine the fate of the colonies they're bombing? Chen asked. Should the Skarath be allowed to determine the fate of the beings they've enslaved? Veltar was quiet for several seconds. Admiral, the Zephyrian people are grateful for your assistance. But we're concerned about what happens when all the aggressive species are gone. Who will keep the peace? We will, Chen said without hesitation. The simple statement hung in the space between them. Chen could see Veltar processing the implications. The humans weren't just solving immediate problems. They were establishing themselves as the dominant power in this entire region of space. Admiral, Veltar said slowly, some members of our council believe that humanity might be becoming the very thing we asked you to protect us from. Chen smiled the same cold smile that had become her trademark. Ambassador, there's one critical difference between humans and the species we're replacing. We don't conquer for resources or territory or because we enjoy causing suffering. We conquer because we're very good at it and because someone needs to keep the peace. But who keeps the peace from the peacekeepers? Chen turned back to the tactical displays. Red dots were disappearing from the star map as human fleets completed their objectives. Soon there would be no red dots left in this entire sector. Ambassador, your species has had peace for 1,000 years because you were isolated in a quiet part of the galaxy. But you're not isolated anymore. You've joined a larger community, and that community has predators in it. Someone has to hunt the predators, and humans have appointed yourselves to that role. We didn't appoint ourselves, Chen replied. We were chosen by natural selection. We're the species that survived and thrived, despite having predators of our own. That experience taught us how to deal with predators much more effectively than species that never had to face them. The transmission ended. Chen knew that Veltar and the Zephyrian Council would spend weeks debating what humanity's presence meant for their future. She also knew it didn't matter what they decided. The humans were here now and they weren't leaving. Admiral, Commander Park announced, Operation Clean Sweep is showing excellent results. Fourth Hand forces are retreating on all fronts. Skyrath shipyard production has stopped completely. The Nethys research facilities have been captured intact. Casualties? Human casualties, 17 wounded, 0 killed. Enemy casualties, approximately 400,000 combat deaths, plus whatever civilian casualties resulted from the infrastructure damage. Chen nodded. Those numbers represented the fundamental difference between human warfare and everyone else's. Other species fought until they were defeated. Humans fought until their enemies couldn't fight back. Sir, said Intelligence Officer Martinez, we're receiving surrender offers from 12 different species. Apparently, word is spreading about what happens to empires that resist human demands. Good, Chen said. The more who surrender without fighting, the fewer people die overall. On the main display, a new message appeared from Earth Command. Chen read it quickly, then allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. The United Nations had officially approved the creation of the Terran Peacekeeping Authority, with Admiral Chen as its first commander. Humanity was formally taking responsibility for maintaining stability throughout this sector of the galaxy. Commander Park, send a message to all human fleet commanders. As of today, we're not just the Terran Defense Force anymore. We're the galaxy's police force. Yes, sir. What should we tell them about long-term objectives? Chen looked at the star map, now showing green dots where red ones had been just months ago. Every green dot represented a star system under human protection. Every species in those systems could sleep peacefully, knowing that nothing would threaten them without facing human retaliation. Tell them we have 17 sectors cleared and secured. Our next objective is to expand operations to the surrounding regions. I want every aggressive species in this part of the galaxy either reformed or removed within 2 years. Sir, Commander Park said quietly, that's a lot of territory to control. Commander, humanity spent 50,000 years learning how to dominate a single planet. Now we have the entire galaxy to work with. I think we can handle it. Outside the command center windows, human warships moved in perfect formation toward their next targets. The galaxy was about to learn what real peace looked like. 2 years after first contact, Ambassador Veltar stood in the conference room of the Zephyrian Council Hall, looking out at a galaxy that had been completely transformed. The view screen showed peaceful trade ships moving between systems that had once been battlefields. No wars raged anywhere in the local sector. No aggressive empires threatened innocent colonies. It was everything the Zephyrians had dreamed of when they first sent their desperate plea to Earth. So why did Veltar feel like they had made the worst mistake in galactic history? The human occupation forces are requesting another meeting, announced Council Leader Velsera, her voice heavy with resignation. They want to discuss the new defense protocols for our outer colonies. Veltar turned away from the window. Around the circular table sat the leaders of 6 different species, all of them looking tired and worried. These beings had once ruled their own worlds, made their own decisions, and shaped their own destinies. Now they spent their time responding to human requests and following human protocols. What kind of defense protocols? Asked Velnuro, the representative from the mining colonies. Mandatory human military bases on every world with more than 10 million inhabitants, Velsara replied, plus regular inspections of all spacecraft and communication systems. They call it proactive security management. The council members looked at each other with the same expression Veltar had been seeing for months. They were grateful to be alive, but increasingly aware that being alive wasn't the same thing as being free. Perhaps we should review what we've gained, suggested Velkira, the youngest council member. The Krillians are gone. The Vorthans, the Skarath, the Nethys Collective, all the aggressive species that threatened us. Our people are safe. Our people are alive, corrected Veltar. That's not the same thing as safe. Before anyone could respond, the chamber doors opened to admit Admiral Chen and a small group of human officers. The humans had stopped asking permission to enter Zephyrian government facilities. They now considered themselves partners in all important decisions. Council Leader Velsara, Admiral Chen said with a polite nod, "Thank you for agreeing to meet with us on short notice." Veltar noticed that Chen had said agreeing, even though the humans hadn't actually asked permission. It was a small thing, but it represented everything wrong with their current situation. The humans maintained the fiction of partnership while making it clear that refusal wasn't an option. "Admiral," Velsera replied carefully. We understand you have concerns about security in the outer systems. That's correct. Admiral Chen activated a holographic display showing the local star map. Our intelligence networks have detected possible separatist activity in 14 different systems. Some species are questioning the need for continued human oversight now that the major threats have been eliminated. Veltar felt his heart skip a beat. Separatist activity? Groups advocating for reduced human military presence, explained Captain Webb, who had been promoted to head of regional security. Some are even suggesting that member species should be allowed to withdraw from the Terran Peacekeeping Authority entirely. The council members looked at each other nervously. Veltar realized that several of them had probably been part of similar discussions in private. Of course, Admiral Chen continued, we understand that some beings might feel this way after such a long period of stability. It's natural to forget why protection is necessary when you haven't seen a threat in a while. What kind of response are you planning? Velsera asked. Captain Webb smiled, and Veltar felt the familiar chill that came whenever humans displayed amusement about security matters. We're implementing a new education program, Webb said. Species that express doubts about human protection will receive detailed briefings about galactic history, including documentation of what happened to civilizations that tried to maintain independence without adequate military support. Veltal understood immediately. The humans were going to show doubting species exactly what they had been saved from, and exactly what would happen to them without continued human protection. We're also expanding our early warning systems, Admiral Chen added. Long-range scout fleets are already exploring sectors beyond our current area of operations. We've discovered at least 30 potentially aggressive civilizations that could pose threats to current member species. Veltar closed all four eyes and tried to process this information. Every time it seemed like the humans might reduce their presence, they discovered new threats that required expanded operations. Admiral, he said carefully, how long do you estimate it will take to secure these new threat areas? Conservative estimate? 10 to 15 years for complete pacification of the surrounding sectors. 15 years. Veltar realized that most of the beings in this room would be dead before the humans considered their work finished. Their children would grow up never knowing a galaxy without human supervision. There is one more matter, Admiral Chen said, her tone becoming more serious. We've received reports that some member species are developing weapons research programs without human oversight. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Every species in the Authority was allowed to maintain basic police forces and planetary defense systems, but advanced weapons research required human approval. Which species? Velsera asked quietly. The details are classified, Captain Webb replied, but we'll be conducting comprehensive security reviews of all member species over the next few months. Any unauthorized research will be terminated, and the responsible parties will be relocated to secure facilities for re-education. Veltar understood the real message. The humans had discovered that someone was trying to develop weapons that could potentially challenge human dominance. The security reviews would be used to eliminate any possibility of future resistance. After the humans left, the council sat in silence for several minutes. Finally, Velnuro spoke up. I remember when the Krillians first attacked our colonies. I thought nothing could be worse than living under their rule. The humans aren't like the Krillians, Valkyra said defensively. They don't kill civilians or destroy cultures for entertainment. They're protecting us, are they? Veltar asked quietly. Or are they protecting their investment? He activated his own holographic display, showing economic data from across the Authority. Look at the trade patterns. Every major trade route now goes through human-controlled systems. Every advanced technology requires human approval. Every important political decision is made with human input. The data painted a clear picture. The human-protected species were prosperous, safe, and completely dependent on their protectors for everything that mattered. They've created a system where we can't survive without them, Veltal continued. Even if they wanted to leave us alone, we no longer have the knowledge or resources to defend ourselves. Velsera leaned back in her chair. What are you suggesting, Veltar? That we should have let the Krillians destroy us? I'm suggesting that maybe we traded one form of conquest for another. The Krillians would have killed us quickly. The humans are killing us slowly, so gradually that we don't even notice it happening. But our people are happy, Valkyra protested. Crime rates are at historic lows. Interspecies cooperation has never been better. The economy is stronger than ever. Our people are content, Veltar corrected. They have food, entertainment, and safety. But when did any of them last make a decision that mattered? When did any of us? He gestured toward the window, where human patrol ships moved in perfect formation through Zephyrian space. We asked for allies, and we got protectors. We asked for help, and we got administrators. We asked for freedom from the Krillians, and we got a different kind of prison. The council was quiet again. Outside, the galaxy continued its peaceful existence under human supervision. Trade flowed, colonies prospered, and no one died in unnecessary wars, so what do we do? Velsara asked finally. Veltar looked around the table at the faces of beings who had once ruled their own worlds and now managed local affairs under human oversight. Nothing, he said sadly. We do absolutely nothing, just like always. We attend our meetings, we discuss our concerns, and we follow human recommendations, because that's what we are now. We're the people who asked the humans to solve our problems, and they solved them so completely that we don't have any problems left to solve. As the council members filed out of the chamber, Veltar remained behind, staring at the peaceful stars. Somewhere out there, human fleets were moving toward 30 new civilizations that didn't yet know they needed protection. Soon, those civilizations would discover what the Zephyrians had learned. When you ask humans for help, they don't just solve your immediate problem, they solve all your problems forever, even the problem of having to solve problems at all.